since the outbreak of coronavirus was reported in Wuhan, China last December, the number of people infected worldwide has soared to over 14,000 and the total death has exceeded 1,100. The virus is spreading across Asia, including to Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia, and also to countries in Europe and North America. Although only one death has been reported outside China so far. It remains to be seen how lethal this new virus ultimately will be. At the moment, it is certainly less severe than the 2002-2003 SARS epidemic caused by a different coronavirus. The new bird has killed more people, but SARS was deadlier, killing almost 10% of the 8,096 people worldwide known to have been affected. Nonetheless, on January 23, Chinese President Xi Jinping's government announced a lockdown of Wuhan, a city of 11 million people. Since then, the number of Chinese cities under quarantine has risen to 16, and more will follow. The quarantines and other compulsory measures aimed at containing the disease severely handicapping the Chinese economy, with knock-on effect elsewhere in Asia. Wuhan, for example, is the capital of Hubei province, one of Chinese industrial centers. Leading Japanese car makers Honda and Nissan have factories there, and do several of their European rivals. Producers of car parts, electronics components, and industrial equipment also have important manufacturing factories in this region. Many of these factories have had to halt production because their employees have been unable to return after the Chinese New Year holiday. This shutdown constitutes a major shock to global economies, supply chain across Asia. Based on value of these exports to mainland China and Hong Kong relative to GDP, Taiwan is likely to be the hardest hit, followed by Vietnam, Malaysia, and South Korea. Regional employers face a further supply shock because many Chinese working in Japan or other Asia countries will not or cannot return from China. Furthermore, the coronavirus outbreak will disrupt export of Chinese products to Japan, in particular processed food and clothing. All these factors will cause supply shortages and thus deepen economic growth among Chinese trade partners. The coronavirus also will cause a large demand shock, not least because Chinese travelers have been a great boon to many countries' tourism sector. Chinese tourist numbers are now falling sharply as China bars its citizens from group tours abroad, and many countries refuse or restrict the entry of Chinese. Judging by the size of Chinese visitors' expenditure related to GDP, popular destinations such as Taiwan, Thailand, Vietnam, and Singapore will take the hardest hit. Japan will be especially concerned should the outbreak persist because the Summer Olympic Games are scheduled to start in Tokyo on July 24th. But even if the virus is a long way from reaching its peak, China can mitigate the negative aggregate demand shock with stimulus measures such as the announced by the People's Bank of China on February 2nd. Other governments and central banks in the region can take similar steps if necessary. Companies can substitute disrupted supply chains with alternative sources of input, and consumption may shift further online. Some of these changes may turn out to be permanent. Globally, China's extraordinary economic surge over the past 40 years has resulted in it becoming the world's second biggest economy, with a GDP of $13.6 trillion compared with $20.5 trillion for the United States. Annualized growth of 7% and more, way beyond the capacity of developed countries, has become the norm. China economic growth, as all know, is second largest to the US, followed by Japan, Germany, United Kingdom, France, India, Italy, Brazil, and Canada. China reached its position by supplanting the US as the fulcrum of global trade. Beijing is the largest trade of merchandise in the world and is fast catching the US in commercial services, following an 18% growth spurt in 2018. The long-held practice of sourcing components and widgets from Chinese companies and the country's vast and growing domestic market has encouraged thousands of foreign businesses to open their own factories on the mainland, join local distribution network, and open shops. China is also central to a diverse range of global supply chain. Much of the world's raw materials travel to China before being turned into a manufactured product. Last year's battle with the US government over import tariff on billions of dollars worth of goods illustrated the power of Chinese economy to disrupt and disturb the global outlook. Now, this is how the coronavirus is affecting the economy of China. Most industries in China shut down over the last 2 weeks around the Lunar New Year. The majority of the factories were not expected to open again until this weekend, and some have delayed opening until 14th February as a precaution, as tens of millions of people remained locked down in dozens of cities across the country. Car makers are shutting down plants, coffee outlets are closed, and pubs are far quieter than usual. Small and medium-sized businesses with operation on short-term contracts and with small financial and physical reserves are known to already be in trouble. Reports from the region across China's central belt tell us Tucker farmer only days away for running out of feed. Wuhan, a city of about 11 million people, Wuhan is a regional hub, an important cog in the automotive industry and a magnet for foreign firms. It is the third largest education and scientific base in China, with 2 top 10 universities. It is impossible to think that weeks of standstill will not have a considerable impact on economic output. The Chinese president Xi Jinping acknowledged as much last week. In response, the authorities are redoubling efforts to shore up the economy, slashing tariff on US imports and making borrowing cheaper for businesses and consumers. According to last year, China economy grew by 6%. According to Beijing Official Statistics Agency, which was the lowest rate for almost 30 years and a big drop from the 10.2% achieved in 2010. There were hopes that 2020 would prove to be a period of recovery following a protracted trade war during 2019 with the US Trump administration. The coronavirus makes that unlikely. Most analysts are still predicting growth well above 5% for the Chinese economy based on what is known as far about the virus spread and the likely impact on consumers, businesses, and government. But Zhang Ming, an official in the Chinese Academy of Science, Social Sciences in Globemia, he told Zhenjiang magazine GDP growth in the first quarter of 2020 could be about 5%, and we cannot rule out the possibility of falling below 5%. So China is likely to drop below 5%. Analysts are expecting China this year, because of the coronavirus, to drop to 3.7%, even lower than that. So the coronavirus is way eating up in China economy. The most vulnerable of all industries are the traveling and tourism industries, which usually enjoy a boom during the New Year holiday period. Cancelled flights and hotel bookings in China across the Asia region, which relies on Chinese tourists, have followed the clampdown on travel through and from the big cities of China's central belt, and even from the mainland to Hong Kong. Airlines have scaled back services. Cathay Pacific plans to cut flight numbers by 1/3 over coming weeks and has encouraged staffs to take weeks of unpaid leave. According to Neil Sharing, the chief economist at Capital Economics, said passenger numbers have fallen by 55% compared with the Lunar New Year period in 2019. And given that China tourists spend a lot in Asian countries, the cost of traveling bans will be felt throughout the region. If the crisis persists, the global effect will be palpable. The Chinese made 173 million visits in the 12 months to end of September last year, and together they spent more than $250 billion, more than any other country. But tourism is just the start. Entire supply chain, automotive, electronic industry are starting to creak. Shipping companies are reporting a sharp drop in container volumes. China also has a huge domestic market for retail and food and beverages. One indicator that really hit the scales last week, partly as a result of virus, was the price of coffee. Starbucks alone has 4,000 outlets in China. Half of them were closed by the outbreak. Asia stock market endured a seesaw last week. Western markets largely follow suit. Now just take a look. This is the Tokyo market, which has been volatile over the last 2 weeks. It has been volatile. You check the next one, you see the Shanghai market fall heavily last week. You see how it goes down. But oil prices came under pressure too, amid anticipation of a slowdown in global demand, as did other raw materials. China is the world's largest crude importer and also a big consumer of metal such as copper and iron ore. Oil prices have fallen sharply as the coronavirus spread. You can see that. You can see how it drops. It drops from 60, 68, and it goes down to 52 just because of the corona virus. You see how things are dropping. So what we are trying to say is, if the coronavirus persists, it will not only affect China economically, it will affect the world global economy. It will affect the world global economy on the negative, as it has already started affecting, because most countries that are for their food supply, automobile supply, electronic supply, they can't do anything but wait to see how the virus is controlled and contained. Now just know that the coronavirus is spreading at a rate 6 times faster than the SARS, mostly through human contact between people not yet showing symptoms. China is a much more open economy than it was even in 2002, and so the disruption is expected to be greater than that caused by SARS. So now, what about the worldwide companies that will be worst affected by a China slump? Many global companies rely on suppliers based in China. For example, 290 of Apple's 800 suppliers are based in China, and the country is responsible for 9% of global TV production, according to DHL's Resilience 360 Index. 50% of all manufacturing in the wuhan is related to the automotive industry, and 25% to technology supplies from the region. Automotive executives in Europe and the US are warning they are just weeks away from shortages. Hyundai has already shut down operation in South Korea because of a lack of parts from China, to indicate how integrated some foreign firms have become in China. The US industrial glass and ceramic makers Corning has built 19 factories across mainland and has more than 5,000 Chinese employees. The company is planning to increase its footprint after spending $1 billion on a facility to produce its state-of-the-art generation 10.5 black glass used for LCD panels. Apple is supplied from factories in China and has a network of 42 Apple stores that it says will remain closed until 9th of February. Other US retailers from Starbucks 4,200 shops to Levi's have closed their shops, though Levi's only closed half its complements, and China only accounts for 3% of its global sales. Southeast Asia is most exposed, so tightly are local economies tied to the Chinese behemoth. It is worth remembering that Asia's worst post-war financial crisis in 1997-98 was partly blamed on the devaluation of the Chinese currency. Japan may be a richer economy, but it too is exposed. China is a big buyer of Japan's industrial machines, its cars and trucks, and technological advanced consumer goods. China-made parts go in other direction, feeding components into Japanese factories, and then there are the millions of Chinese tourists who visit their eastern neighbors each year. Already, Japan is bracing for cancellations from 400,000 people in the first quarter of 2020. Australia's economy is tightly interconnected with China too, and the Prime Minister Scott Morrison warned last week of a real weight on the economy Even Australian universities are suffering because far fewer Chinese students have returned to enroll for the new academic year. The UK, like other European countries, is in a position to limit the flow of Chinese visitors without a huge impact on the economy, though designer outlets, shopping centers such as Oxfordshire, Bicester Village, and see we see several downtrodden if Chinese visitors stay away from or for any length of time. The broader impact of coronavirus will be felt if global trade, as expected, begin to slow down. Britain is plunged into all the big economies, and for that reason always catches a cold when the global economy sneezes. Last year, UK manufacturing went into recession in response to the tariff war between the US and China, which hit global trade. So now, what will be the overall impact? The overall impact of coronavirus. Economists are cautiously speculating that the perhaps 0.3 percentage points may be shaved off global growth, though it would remain somewhere around the 3% mark. Now you take a look. Global GDP growth has remained steady for much of the past decades. Christian Keller, the head of economic research at Barclays, said the impact on the world economy could range from almost no change to its current global growth forecast of 3.3% for 2020 to growth of about 3%. Others are gloomier still, warning that if the virus continues to spread and Chinese activity remains deeply disrupted for months, a contraction of global economy is not impossible, particularly as central banks have little effective monetary ammunition for emergency. According to him, there is a risk that an adverse feedback mechanism and limited space for policy response could push the global economy towards recession. So in the long run, all we pray is for the outbreak of coronavirus to be curtailed and halt. If nothing is done about it, the widespread of coronavirus is going to affect the world economically. It will affect them negatively. Globally, it will affect the economy of the world, which, if care is not taken, might lead to a global recession. I want you to like, I want you to share, I want you to subscribe, as we bring you more updates on the issue at hand.